All right, good evening. Call the meeting to order. I'll start with public participation. Seeing none in the room,
Nobody online.
we online. Okay. I heard Stefan did a swell job in my absence.
Good.
I'll have to be absent again. No, it usually is a team effort. It's good. Okay, first item on the agenda would have been the animal inspector. But I'd like to go out of order if possible, if everybody agrees, and do the insurance. John is here from the insurance company. And you're all okay with that? Issues, anybody? I don't think I need to vote on that, do I, Steve?
No, you don't. You have the chair's prerogative.
John, good evening. How are you? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Good evening, I am well, and how was everyone?
Good, thank you. All right, so the first one would be general insurance, Kevin?
Yes, general insurance budget, we're recommending that this budget be increased $23,175 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down $16,700 to the tax levy portion of the budget, $4,000 to the water division, $2,475 to the sewer division. This budget covers the town's buildings, motor vehicles, professional liability, and cybersecurity. Total budget request is $582,600, with $531,625 coming from the tax levy, $32,000 from the water enterprise, and $18,975 coming from the sewer enterprise. Before I turn it over to John, we will be looking for a reserve fund transfer at the end of the year for this budget. A couple items came up, both dealt with the MBTA rail trail that John will discuss. We're going to be looking for right around $40,000 for this budget. With that, I will turn it over to John.
Thank you, Kevin. Insurance would always be first. So I am fighting a sore throat here. So before I go into
Turn that up a little. You're good, John, go ahead.
okay,
Right.
Before I go into 26, I just want to kind of go through 25. Like Kevin said, we had to satisfy the requirements of the MBTA rail trail, and Steve and I had looked at this a few years ago and actually gathered some quotes, but there wasn't much activity going on at the time, and we kind of just ignored it, I guess would be the best term. Last year, the engineering department wanted to do work there, so they weren't going to be allowed on the property without us satisfying the requirements. And one of the requirements was a 5-year one-time pollution liability policy, which we purchased for $25,000. The other requirement was that they wanted to increase we needed to increase our excess liability to $5 million. Now, we had a $1 million policy at the time for the Wakefield Police Department and Fort Devens. That was just over the liability only. So we just had to increase what we had, and to increase it to $5 million, that cost a little over $14,000. That really pushed this budget over, as Kevin stated. So last year, property insurance has been an issue across the country and for us too. And our program administrator took in a second carrier. We've always been with Arch Insurance Company, but they took in a second carrier, which turned out to be Chubb. And, going through the process of the renewal with Arch, I was furious, I guess, in some way. But we had Chubb take a look at it because we've been increasing our deductible from $75 to $100 to $250,000, which is the highest one they have in their program in Massachusetts. I don't know why other communities don't have it that high, but so when we presented to Chubb, they really liked the account a lot, and we kind of had to run around for the last few days, but they were $17,000 off our expiring policy, and Arch was much higher on the renewal. So we moved it to Chubb and we picked up $17,000 there. But unfortunately, our commercial auto and general liability went up. Auto went up actually quite a bit nationwide, but it went up a lot for us. So, and at the last few days with Kevin, Steve, and I, we increased deductibles. I took collision and comprehensive off a lot of vehicles I probably would have left on. And then I asked, for as much credit as I could with them. And, we kind of came right in on budget, but like I say, the pollution and the excess liability pushed us over the top. So overall, really not a bad year, considering everything that's been going on. But so before I go to 26, is there any questions on 25?
Did you say you went to Chubb in 25, or was that all what you just described?
So we now, Chubb is our carrier now. I moved it last year.
Last year, yes, okay.
Right, the last few days. Chubb came on late, and
Yep.
things weren't really going very well with Arch, and they really didn't want to give us much credit for the $250,000 deductible. And my underwriter at our program administrator talking to the underwriter at Arch, and I said, well, why do we want to give credit to an account that never has claims, which made me furious. It's just ridiculous. We haven't had a claim with them in 30 years, so we didn't really pick up any savings there with them. So I offered it to Chubb, and they love the account, so it worked out well for us.
Anybody else in 25? Okay,
Okay, so in 26,
thank you.
thank you. In 26, in my cover letter to Steve, I recommended that we take coverage off the present high school, my junior high. But I withdrew that recommendation, and I would say that we had a very healthy discussion with town councilors, and it went pretty much how I thought it would go. You might get a split between some that want to do it, some that really have to think about it, and that's why I took it off the table, because I think it's something that they have to get their arms around. So where the budget meets in February of next year, the last week in February, even if we keep it on for 2 months, it's okay. Then you're down to 10 months before the new school is ready. And then you have a discussion of when you want to take it off, but I wouldn't keep it on any longer than June. I wouldn't keep it on any longer than June of 26. So it was a good discussion. I thought very healthy, a lot of good points. And I think they just, I think they need to think about it a little bit more. As far as, this budget in 2026, I never know here. I mean, so I don't know what it looks like. Steve, Kevin, and I sit down in June, and we make all the changes then. Most of it's just a guess right now, but I would say that the industry right now is pretty stable, especially in Massachusetts, in terms of their renewal pricing from what I've seen. So that's all I have for
Okay,
26.
so do I have it right? It's about a 4.4% increase?
1.4, I think. Overall, yes.
I think so. My math
Yeah,
could do that.
John's memo described it as a 4.4 overall.
Well, the number in the sheet is different. But
Yep. Questions?
Well, what's taken into consideration there was I was going to take coverage off in January of 26, and the savings from January to June 30th of that year would be approximately $33,000. It costs about $70,000 to insure the present high school. So what's that, $5,800 a month. So we're not going to do that right now, obviously. So minus January and February. So won't realize that $33,000 savings. At least it's up in the air at this point.
Okay. Any else questions?
I have a question. So
Ryan?
we're currently at 107% of the year's budget for motor vehicle. And most of them are at 100%. So we typically don't, like, these are all charges that get incurred in the first half of the year. Is that fair to say? Okay. And,
Yes,
and then the motor vehicle part is probably the driving force behind the amount that we'll have to put in from available funds later. Is that right? Like the 40,000 that we're likely to need,
That was because of the rail trail.
that was specific to the rail trail, which was something we just, okay.
Right.
This year's budget is gonna need an appropriation for that.
And then,
Reserve fund, right.
Yeah.
got it.
so that excess liability policy, that 5 million is now up in the property and liability in 2026, but the pollution obviously is gone because we you paid a 5-year premium on it already. You don't have to meet that requirement any longer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, John. That's general workman's comp then. Kevin?
Workers' comp budget, we're recommending that this budget be increased $167,566 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down to the tax levy portion. The increase is $134,000. We're also charging off to the school lunch account. First time we've done that. For fiscal 26, the amount is $21,566. There's an increase to the water division, $3,277, an increase to the sewer division of $928, and an increase to the municipal light department account of $7,795. The total budget request is $669,476, with $581,110 coming from the tax levy, $21,566 coming from the school lunch account, $12,497 from the water enterprise, $6,808 from the sewer enterprise, and $47,495 coming from the gas and light enterprise.
Okay. John, you want to comment on these or?
Yes, so, once again, in this current year, we had to increase our employer's liability, which is Part B of the workers' comp. We had the statutory 100, 500 limit, but they, under the rail trail, they wanted to have 1 million. And in order to increase that, you can see the premium there is 9,982. And the following year, it's 11,133. It's 2% of the payroll. That's what the Workers' Compensation Bureau has down as a rule. So as our payroll grows, so isn't Part B going to grow? So I just point that out, the $10,000 of, of what we're going to need for reserve fund transfers is in this, because this all came, around in July. So, okay. So any questions on that part?
I just have one question. You keep mentioning the rail trail. Is that because of construction on the rail trail? Because it's open? What's the causes that?
So they have, so we lease the property. So they have insurance requirements for us.
Okay.
We meet most of them, except they wanted, a higher excess liability policy. And they wanted a pollution liability policy, which we satisfied. And on workers' comp, they want higher Part B coverage, employer's liability. And we had to satisfy that. The employer's Part B, that's going to continue until, I think we have a 99-year lease. And the excess liability of 5 million, that's going to continue going forward too.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in order to lease the rail, the MBTA has really jacked these. No other word for it. The coverage up, which is kind of crazy to me, but there must be a lot of injuries.
The charge
Rail
back
trail.
on the charge back on the cherry sheet?
It's not enough.
That's not-
That's not enough. That's not gonna go down.
If we pay the MBTA more.
I've never seen that happen.
Go ahead, John.
I want to talk a little bit about the experience rating worksheets, and I'm assuming all of you have them.
We do.
Okay, thank you. So on the very first page, if you look at the box on the right-hand side, these are our expected losses. Our expected losses are based on state averages, and we have 18 classifications. And I'll take the teachers as an example. The teacher's rate is 60 cents. The state, that's per $100 of payroll. The state average for losses for that is 31 cents. Another 29 cents goes to the carrier. So you take the 31 cents times the teacher payroll, and you come up with what we call our expected losses. So we have there those 3 years, I have my regular glasses, $791,000 are our expected losses based on our payroll. If we have that amount or less, then we're below the state average. The column to the left is our actual incurred losses. And our actual incurred losses, you'll see, is almost double what the state average is at about $1.3 million. Workers' compensation for municipalities is like a pendulum for us. 2 years ago, we had a credit on our experience rating, and now we have a 134 experience rating. So we're 34% higher than the state average. So if you look at 2011 on the incurred losses, you'll see we have $650,000 there. That will drop off next year. The 560.
21. Yeah.
Go ahead.
21.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Yep. So the 650 will drop off. The 565 moves up, and that $100,000 goes in the middle. That $100,000, all those claims are closed. And to tell you about the pendulum here, our current year will go into the rating next year. And incredibly, through January 31st, we've had $2,150 in losses. It's just, I've never seen it that low through 7 months. So now we're going the other way. Chances are, I mean, if we have a really good year, and I thought this before in January, it's not, sometimes it hasn't worked out, but if we have a really good year, you can see that 34% gone next year. But we still have 4 more months. If you can go to page 2 for me, it's really the same thing as the cover here. On the left-hand side, we'll show the claims, and on the right-hand side, it's going to show payroll and expected losses. If you look at the first on the left-hand side, you'll see that the C, where it says all the claims are closed, up to $7,500. So up to $7,500 is our experience mod, and that measures frequency of claims. When you push through, in that particular, our experience mod right now is 1.20. Below the 75, pushing through 75 and going further, you'll see the bigger numbers there. That's called the ARAP charge, or all risk adjustment premium, and that measures severity of claims. That is 1.14. That's how it makes up our 34% higher than the state average. And just to give an example of the pendulum here, if you go all the way down to the bottom on the left-hand side, go down to the severity of claims, you'll see a claim down there for $310,000. That's still open, and it was an auto accident that was not our fault. I don't expect any recovery. But that represents almost 25% of our entire 3-year total. So it happens like that. It was just 2 bad years, perfect storm, I guess, in the negative sense, but we're going the other way now. On the right-hand side is the payroll and the expected losses. And I just want to point out, if you look at what says class code and you look at 8868, you get $37.5 million in payroll. Right beside it is the expected loss rate, which is 31 cents. You take the 31 cents times the $37 million. And for the teachers in any 1 year, $116,000 or less is positive for our experience mod. Anything above that is negative for our experience mod. I've underlined there all the payrolls you'll see that there's 55,000, 57,000, and then the following year is 61. Right now, on a current policy, I have payroll projections of about 60, a little under 64. And this for next year is 66. So the payroll keeps rising, and that's to be expected. So payroll and rates, you can kind of get your arms around. Experience modification, you can see really swings this budget. And if we can go back to the very first page, the other night at the counselors meeting, I don't know who it was, and he said, gee, I'm going to a calculus class tonight when I was explaining all this, and I never took calculus. So I used my 12 years of Wakefield Public Schools education and 46 years of experience. And I can just say this, if the number on the left column there is higher than the one on the right, our mod's going up. You know, if the one on the left is lower than the one on the right, it's going down. And that's really how simple this whole thing is. So that's all I have for the workers' comp budget. My calculus.
Questions? Yeah, I don't think it was calculus, but I appreciate that.
So we're not going to see any benefit to the low payments that we've had for a while, right? Because it has to work its way through the calculation. Because we carry these charges for years, right?
Well, it draw every 3 years. So next year you'll probably see, if things continue out this year, you know, that high one drops off, gets replaced by the 550. And I think all of those are closed, John, on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Thousand
that's
are all
good. So there's
closed.
no more to come there. I think the year after that is low, and this year is extremely low. So next year you'll probably see a much better.
Yeah, we're gonna
number
lose
here.
this. We'll lose the 650, and you move the 565 up. We still have 2 open claims there.
Okay,
In that
cool.
year, right? And in the $100,000, 100,000, there is no open claims.
That's the one that's closed, yeah.
We get $2,100 basically year to date. So we're having a good year, and that's what municipal workers' comp is. It's not, there's not a big appetite out there for it. You know, we're in a self-insured group. You know, you take 1,000 employees, you know, and a lot of people come onto the town of Wakefield, and they want to work for the town and stay there. They get good health benefits, good retirement benefits, but over time in their jobs, like most, they get, you know, the bodies get compromised, and when they have injuries, you know, they take a long time to recover. Or in this case, I think in those 3 years, I think we either had 3 or 4. I know we had at least 3 retirements out of it, but I had 4 retirements out of it just because they can't come back into their own jobs. So that's the nature of municipal workers' comp. It's going to be, you know, all over the place in terms of losses and experience more. But I was just happy a couple of years ago that we were on the credit side, because it's been a long, long time. We've always been on the debit side. And the reason for that is we have 18 classifications. We don't sub out a lot here. You know, we do most of our own work, and a lot of municipalities, they'll sub out some of the more dangerous, well, maybe not dangerous, but just more classifications they'll sub out, and so they don't have to, you know, deal with it. So we do a lot of our own work. So.
I have one question for Kevin or whomever. So it's a 26.9% increase, that's correct? Looking at the spreadsheet provided on the tax levy side?
29 is what I see.
Yeah, okay.
29.97.
Tax levy.
So I mean, is that typical year over year, Steve or Kevin? Is this, would you call it high?
This is a higher increase than we
I know
normally
you
have.
explained it pretty well with the additional stuff that moved in, but
23-24, it was 12.49% down. 24-25, it was 5.2% up. And then 25-26, it's, you know, just that tax levy before we go through dividends and such and supplements. is, as we were just saying, 26.94. So it does dramatically swing.
Like a pendulum, somebody called.
Yeah,
Well, the losses are a pendulum, but I just want to go back
Yeah.
on something here. I also put the proposed rate of 7.1% increase that the Workers' Comp Bureau was asking the Division of Insurance. They've been going at it pretty good the last 3 or 4 years. Now, 3 years ago, the Bureau asked for a decrease. Division of Insurance took that decrease and added 10% to it. So we benefited for that because I take the proposed rates because I have no other information to use. So when the policy comes in, we have a 10% decrease from there. We've had leftover money for 2 years, which I've never had the luxury of before. And because our mod was actually low, I was buying more payroll in there. So we didn't have any large audits. Last year, the Workers' Compensation Bureau asked for a decrease again. And this went into July 3rd. It wasn't resolved till July. It's usually resolved in April. So not only did they not take the decrease, they actually increased our rates, and that's why we're behind. Same holds true on the experience rating. That's a pending experience rate that I just gave you. That has to be approved by the National Council, the NCCI, and that usually doesn't come through till April. They're usually pretty close, but they weren't last year. So could change again. So whatever I do in either budgets in January, it doesn't always hold true that that's our budget in July.
Dan, you have a question?
More of a comment. I've taken a look at from fiscal year 19 through 26, and 19 had no change. 20 was up 14%. That's the largest recent change. 21, 22 went down, up 3, up 1, up 2, now up 33. But over that 8-year period, our average increases is at 6.5%. So until we had this 33% increase, we were actually doing pretty well on workers' comp.
Well, and that'll happen
Great.
next year. That'll happen next year too. If we have any decent year and we have $2,100 in losses, so 7 months, even if you ratchet that up to 100,000, another $98,000 in losses for the next few months, you're still going to bring that 1.34 down next year considerably, because you're dropping off a $650,000 a year, which is half of our total. So unless something drastic happens in the next 4 months, I don't expect it to, it's going to go the other way. So thank you, Dan. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Ed,
Just curious, do we have any safety programs looking at preventative measures? Assuming many of these claims are coming from DPW. I'm very happy to see that we're charging school hot lunch. I know cafeteria workers frequently get injured. Curious, any other classifications in the school department where you see some claims coming in?
yeah, you know what, the one that bothers me is that, on 8868, which has your teacher payroll, okay? Mixed into this, I think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of your special ed teachers, and that can be a little bit more propensity, I know the claims is one that there was a violent out, and the teacher got punched and it caused some problems. So, but yes, I mean, there's a lot of, they have a lot of, passive restraint stuff. We do a lot of stuff, stupid stuff like lifting and things like that. So yes.
Well, at least it's a beginning effort here. We'll see charges to the school department appropriately. So,
You really can't, you can't really, apply experience mods to any individual classifications like the light department, water, or sewer. They're all over the place. Some years it's the light department, rarely, but if they have a bad one, they have a bad one. But it's really all over the board here. There was a time 30 years ago that I could book between 48 and 56 claims. There was just no doubt about it. We're down to 22, 20, 24. That's our average on 1,000 employees. That's tremendous. It's just medical costs are high. And the payments, the weekly benefit payments are higher. It's like a scale. On one side, you have medical coverage or medical expense with indemnity payments. And on the other side, you have state rates. What's the average? And when one's heavier, like the medical costs and the indemnity, the mod's going to go up. And that's really not necessarily directly responsible for safety or not safety or, one particular class that we have. Some employees are just more highly compensated. We have a class here, 9410, which has DPW directors, assessors, town engineers, building inspectors. We have claims in those because they have on and off premises exposure, but they're more high, they're highly compensated. So that when they get hurt, it costs more. So, but it's all over the board here. It's not any one particular class.
Good, Ed?
Thank
You all set?
Yeah.
Yeah, my only last question for one of you guys is 8810 is what group? It's $7 million last year.
Teachers and administrators within the schools, coaches. We only have a couple of classes for the school department. We have 8868 and they have 9101. 9101 has cafeteria workers, custodial workers, and crossing guards. So those are the only two classifications. Well, bus drivers too, but that's a separate class. But those are the only two classes. If it doesn't fit in 9101, then it goes into 8868.
I'm sorry, so 8810 is teachers?
No, 8868 is teachers,
Right, that's what I
administrators.
assumed.
Yes.
Okay,
9101 is cafeteria workers, custodial workers, crossing guards.
very good. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good seeing you again, John.
Good to see you. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, back to the top, animal inspector's budget.
Animal inspector's budget, we're recommending level funding for next year. We contract these services out. We also split the cost with Reading. Main expenses within this budget, contractual services, professional services line item, which is the contracted out duties, and it also includes some vet services. Sundry charges, $1,500 for the rental fee for the dog pound that we paid to Saugus. Total budget request for 26 is $41,325.
Comments, zero increase. Need more of that.
Just wait.
Just wait. Next. Thank you. Parking?
Parking clerk. Parking clerk budget, for fiscal 26, we're recommending an increase of $210 over the current fiscal year. Kenny Stake, the former animal control officer, handles the responsibilities, for this department. He works part-time, 6 hours a week. Total budget request for fiscal 26 is $11,125. Do want to point out that we do collect revenue from this department. Fiscal 24 is about $45,000. Year to date, we're at about $24,000.
24 now, what was it last year, did you say?
It was 45.
Comments on parking? Okay,
Do we get more departments to pay for themselves and then some?
yes,
Too easy.
need a subcommittee for that.
Mhm.
Okay, great. We have a light pile today. That's okay. The next item is meeting minutes. We have a finance committee meeting, forecasting minutes of February 4, 2025.
They don't seem to be attached.
No, they were not attached.
Steve, did you do them?
I did them, yeah.
Yeah,
I think you got them.
I got,
You're early on.
I got them
Yeah.
I don't remember
Yeah.
commenting that they were good. I can tell you that for $1.
I remember
I
commenting.
don't think I commented.
They
No,
were
we did-
good.
Yeah, we
Just
all
for the
commented
record.
they were good, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't really want to keep them a secret from the rest of the committee.
All right, so we can just push that to the next meeting. It's okay.
Well,
About that. I noticed that too, and I should have called Steve and I didn't.
Thought it was just my technical difficulties.
Yeah, I
Push it
thought
on
it
to,
I thought it was
Go
gonna
ahead,
show up
Dan.
later. Yeah, but
All right,
we can defer.
yeah, since nobody's had a chance to read it. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And then the next one, last one was the February 13th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting minutes. That you have. Any any motion? Any motion?
I'll move approval.
You
That's
second?
Dan.
Second,
second by Brian.
to have been there, right?
Sure.
Now you ask.
Okay, second, any comments on the meeting minutes? Again, this is Feb 13, 2025. Okay, no comments. All those in favor of the meeting minutes, Feb 2025?
I,
Anybody opposed? I did not vote. I wasn't here. Committee comments, I'll open it up to others first.
I can tell you that for the forecasting subcommittee, I have updated the forecast. If anybody wants a copy, let me know. I've
Yes, please.
added the four that we looked at tonight. And the bottom line really hasn't changed any. We're still about $2 million in the hole for, as a deficit for fiscal year 26. And we still expect to run out of cash, or free cash is still expected to go negative in 31. And our reserves will drop down to less than 10% at the end of fiscal year 27. So that really has no change. So these four budgets really didn't change the needle at all on that forecast. That's all I got.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody have comments on
Well,
that?
Just to be clear, 10% is kind of an important level. And Steve, just to reiterate, you said that in that bond rating meeting, they said that they would give us a AAA, but with a negative outlook.
And they gave us a AAA with a negative outlook.
Excuse me, the 10% is our policy for
That's
having,
our policy, and it's also, and that's a combination of free cash stabilization, special stabilization for the special ed schools, the credit agencies, and I'd always thought best practice was 10%. Took us a long time to get to a nice, comfortable 10%. They said, well, you guys are borrowing 200 million. We'd really like to see 15. So, yeah. And
It's the gold standard.
it's the gold standard, yeah, right. So 12, 13, we might be good, yeah, yeah. And where that's important is that we will be going out sometime in the next 6 months for the final borrowing for the high school, so it'd be good to get the best rate we could on that. We had we exceeded expectations in the first round. Like to do it on the second too, so.
so the results of our budgeting for this fiscal year could impact.
No, well, it's gonna be really more about what happens as we close out this year.
Right, that's thought, yeah.
As we close out.
We just
this
need to
fiscal
find
year.
$2
fiscal
million.
So, I mean, is the idea that we would be returning to the general fund a significant portion of funds?
I think that there will be some returns to the general fund this year,
That's what I'm talking about.
this fiscal year. I think that local revenues will exceed. I was hoping that we would return more to the general fund because we've had really good years in snow and ice, but my budget strategy of prayer didn't work out this year, so shame on me.
Yeah, so I might add for fiscal year 25 in my forecast, I'm assuming a $1 million return to general fund in the forecast.
Yeah.
If it's great, if it's more than 1 million, but that's what I've got now in the forecast.
We also had a couple other things that did happen. We may have some years that the overlay account is no longer necessary and we have no outstanding pellet tax cases, so some of that could roll back and again go into free cash, which would help us out. The other thing is we did get a big tax payment in 900,000 or so in back taxes, a tax title payment in, so that's gonna help. So I think at the end of this year, we'll be hopefully in good shape.
Which will help offset the proposed $2 million loss for next.
It could help. It could help, yeah. It'll give more funding to pull from.
Spam call.
That, Kevin, is that, I know you probably don't want to commit to an estimate for the return. Is that estimate?
Never does.
I know.
The returns historically have been very good. In fiscal 25, though, we
I don't know why my
used this,
Yep.
Hey, Don,
AirPods.
excuse me, Don, you're not muted, Don. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
that one of the biggest budgets that did return historically is the group insurance budget. And in fiscal 25, the year that we're in now, rates went up over 10%. But when we increased the budget, we used the surplus that we had in that budget to help offset the big increase. So going forward, we're not gonna have those types of returns.
Right.
So I'm hoping for somewhere in the $1 million range. Snow and ice past couple of years has helped support that too, but this year's been a little bit more snow, so
Yeah.
we're hoping for.
And on Sunday nights, that hasn't really helped us.
That's true.
And on holidays.
Holidays, yeah.
And then, I know the state delegation was in a few weeks ago. We're hoping they heard some of the things you explained to them.
They were very receptive.
Liar.
You couldn't hear my sarcasm over Zoom, Dan.
Yep. So,
How far are we away from the 15 million in all those accounts currently?
Oh, well, I won't know that till the end of the year, but we did, we used some last year, I felt very comfortable that we would be hitting at the end of this year, back in the 11-12% range. Just kind of based on what I thought would happen when we closed out this year. So, we're kind of talking about how do we move some things around. If we get to that 13%, that would be pretty good. So we'll see.
That 13% of the total annual budget for.
Yeah.
So,
any other comments?
Hope the school doesn't pay forward a bunch of prepaid bills.
We'll be working on that again as usual.
Hmm.
Bill,
Yeah, I just mentioned schools, Brian, so the 22nd, that event is on.
Yes, it is.
Do you know
Yeah, I was
where,
gonna-
do you know where it's
Go
gonna,
ahead.
just curious.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yep, no, it is. I'm getting together with Mr. Markham on Saturday to kind of review the agenda. Any input that you all have about things you want to make sure we touch on, please don't hesitate to pop me an email. And I'll make sure to include that in the discussion. I'll work out, hopefully I'll have a venue worked out by tomorrow morning when I speak with the superintendent.
And that is March 22nd.
March 22nd, right? It's a few weeks away, so,
Yep. Yep. And
okay.
everybody is encouraged to attend,
FinCom? School committee,
or a portion of the school.
the superintendent?
Yes.
I'm certain the superintendent and
Business manager.
Christine will be there. I know that the finance and facilities subcommittee of the school committee will be there. I've heard a rumor that Dan Sherman is thinking about joining us strongly. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the intent is to really kind of review the budget book and dive into all the questions we generally always ask. I don't think there's gonna be a huge anything new, but having a much more in-depth discussion, if you would, about why you can't do chargebacks, what's the law allow, why do you do it this way? How does that happen? So more, that's my desire, that's been the desire of trying to get a group together. The subcommittee, we meet and talk about things, but this is an opportunity for the rest of us to get together if it works out.
With the goals of fleshing out things in advance of our meeting here, or presenting our questions and regarding processes and numbers in advance of here. So will we have something from them in advance of that meeting, or will we just get it on site? Either's fine, I'm just curious.
I don't know yet. I should know more by.
I don't think the
Sat-
book, well, so was about, we're meeting with them in April. The school is scheduled to come
Here
here.
in April, yep.
Typically, they come twice. I'm just trying to figure out whether we're gonna see them twice or this is gonna be one of
Once.
two.
Yep.
In the book that I was referencing worst case, we're gonna be discussing last year's book and more about, process and the money and how they operate if the book isn't ready yet. Again, about why can't you do this? Why do you do it that way? How come we can't do this?
In addition to that, could we perhaps ask them to bring to the table their problem? Like, so if they have budget line items that are problematic for them in a material fashion.
But they're gonna cost a lot of money.
Yeah, my nice way of saying that. Could they like at least raise them that morning? So as like an agenda item, can we have like problem issue, like what are the red flags that we should be really tuned in on so that no one really feels surprised when we get to April? I mean, things could come up between now and April, but I'm gonna guess they have a pretty good handle on what those are right now.
Yeah, and usually the superintendent comes with a short deck of
Yeah.
slides where he talks about, the wish list and what we cut and here's how we think we're gonna fly type of thing. Yeah, I assume that's what you might be referring.
And a big part of it, as Jim is saying, is a chance to, in a more relaxed atmosphere,
Yeah.
have the conversation.
And ads to staff if they're asking for any.
Right, which I'm pretty sure he was talking about how there aren't very many ads coming. Like they recognize that.
I just think those would be two like things to start that we can start noodling on early.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
And they're gonna talk about special education costs, sure.
Yep.
Because it's uncontrollable and.
Mhm.
I mean, there is some control there, right? The more we can have the ability to service our children here, it's gonna cost us less money in the long run. But there's a point at which that's no longer tenable and we don't have control over that. That's definitely one of them. And then they're going to talk about their contracts, right? But you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what we'll focus on.
Yeah, and just Steve talks about this all the time at town council and sometimes here, but the money we get from the state is just not even Steven when you look at communities that look and feel like us. And so that puts a bigger burden on the tax basis, right? And that puts this conversation at a more heightened discussion.
Our net increase as of now on the cherry sheet is 1.6% over last year.
State aid, 1.6% over.
All in, all our net increase. There's,
That's the governor's budget.
right.
Things are supposedly working through the legislature, right?
Yeah, that's the governor's budget. What really irks me, and then it irks Kevin and probably irks Liz a lot too, is that then I go and I look at what other communities get per pupil on chapter 70. And I think that I know there's a formula and I know there's 17 sections and each has 4 subsections. But I look at our communities that are similar to us, our neighbors, and if we got the same per pupil that Melrose got, that Reading got, that we'd get like another $1.5 million in chapter 70. But a big difference that would make in our discussion today.
Positive.
If we got the same as very poor Linfield gets per student, we'd get it like another $500,000 more, something like that. If we got the same as Saugus gets per student, and I'm not comparing ourselves.
It's a gold standard.
There's a gold standard there. It was, how much was it, Kevin?
9 million?
$9 million more in debt. So there is some, and I don't think our delegation took my analysis of that too kind. That's okay.
Thank
Told them they never had to hear me again.
Yeah, you're retiring.
you. Dan, you're up.
Yeah, so just to give you a little, my plans and thinking for the 22nd, yes, I am planning to attend. Brian is very good at twisting arms, as well as my wife. Um, I'm hesitant to go because I'm just gonna hear the same thing we hear every year, and I've been listening to the school committee for 20 years, and they disappoint me every time. So what my plan is also informational, going back to them, a series of questions, but also give them some information. And one of the things I'm working on, to give to Brian in the next few weeks is how much of their budget they never see. In other words, we just talked about workers' comp and the teachers and how much money, their payroll increases at 2%. And then, how much does that cost us? They don't see that. It's not part of their budget. They don't see the retirement. They don't receive the health care. They don't see OPEB. They don't see the insurance. There's a lot of things that we pay, taxpayers pay, that do not show up on their budget. And when they increase their budget, they say, "Oh, we only went up, 5%." Well, yeah, you're maybe 5%, but what the trickle down of that is all these other budgets that go up because you went up 5% instead of 4 or 3 or something like that. So I'm treating it as both questions and informational, and I'll be putting together with, Brian and I put some stuff together that shows them more in line of, you guys are part of a bigger picture, and you're ignoring, a third of the town's budget that you have an impact on. So that's sort of what my plan is. I hope I'm not disappointed, for the 21st time, but we'll see.
Bill,
Just a couple of things, Brian, has your subcommittee been meeting actively have you had many meetings with the school committee?
So, Ellie and I went to a planned meeting of the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee a couple of Fridays ago, and it had been canceled, unbeknownst to us. However, we had an opportunity to sit with the superintendent for an hour plus and talk about a lot of these things. The next one, I found out that apparently they only kind of do these on an ad hoc sort of basis, and somehow they don't have to be posted or something. So, happily we found out about this one on Wednesday, and many of us are going tomorrow morning.
I
to
feel
go
like
see
in
what happens.
the past, it was always, at least several, Jim, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that the subcommittee, and because I was on it the last couple of years, had some specific meetings with them, and it was always on Friday mornings. And
Right.
they're not doing that with you?
They appear to not have quite the regular schedule that they did in the past.
Oh.
yeah, we typically probably meet about 4 times, Bill, I'm gonna say,
Yeah, I know, I think I'm
in the
surprised.
spring.
That's kind of disappointing to hear, I guess. Okay, well, I was curious about that. The other thing, because Steve mentioned it, and I'd encourage any of my colleagues here to watch the town council meeting, not the last meeting, the meeting before, when the state delegation was in meeting with the town councilors and talking about reimbursements and talking about school. It was extraordinarily robust conversation, tense. I think it would be worth going in probably about an hour of the meeting, Steve, would you say?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say that, yep.
Yeah, I would encourage people to watch that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Next meeting is Thursday, March 13th. The school workshop is the Saturday, the 22nd. And those are the future meetings we have. The next meeting, it is scheduled to be fire DPW and articles. We'll see what happens.
That's gonna be different.
Yeah,
I can change that, yeah.
it's
Fire is still there.
still being worked on with DPW due to the insurance allocations or something to that effect, right? Bill, you good? Your hand's still up? You're all set, right? All right.
Oh, yeah, I'm all set, sorry.
Yep. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate the attendance as always. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Good night.
Aye.
That